about his opinions on this topic. Let's welcome.
Okay, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Sadaf, and I'm a PhD candidate at University of Tokyo. And today I'm going to present a part of my PhD research, which is design thinking as digital transformative pedagogy in higher sustainability education to address climate change and sustainability challenges. I will start by saying that this world is falling apart. Climate change is happening, weather patterns are changing, leading to extreme events like bushfires, typhoons, floodings, and so on. For all these sustainability challenges, who is responsible? Us. Yes, human beings and their unsustainable behaviors are responsible for these challenges, and we must change these unsustainable behaviors to deal with such challenges. Therefore, it is important to work on changing our own worldviews, which
Fernando, vamos começar. Pode começar a gravar, tá bom?
Legal, vou começar a gravar agora.
Tá bom, obrigada.
Recording in progress.
Oh, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in our summit. Well, the theme of today is going to be just transition, and this theme is central in the debate on how we can achieve Paris Agreement goals. To be clear, we are using the same idea and concept about the just transition. I'd like to say that just transition refers to a set of principles, process, and practices aimed at ensuring that no people, workers, places, sectors, countries, or regions are left behind in the transition from a high carbon to a low carbon economy. This is so because the significant reduction in emissions implies a change in development, which in turn implies the use of new technology. These development pathways shift is usually expensive, and therefore a financial scheme is necessary. In addition of a low carbon transition, we are also experiencing a digital transition, and all of those technological advances are mostly concentrated in developed countries, with huge potential to increase the gap among countries, widening our disparities. So in order to not to leave anyone out of this transition, the most advanced economies must help others to catch up. Not leaving them aside is not a matter of kindness, of charity, but because it's absolutely necessary to achieve Paris Agreement goals. So the transition toward decarbonizing the economy and getting ready to deal with climate change and all related impacts has to be just. It is time to debate how we can take full profit from the current technological advances to reduce gaps that hold back inclusive and sustainable development. With that, I would like to thank Lydia Couto and Michael Grubb, both are my colleagues at IPCC, for giving space and hosting this event at the UCL in the Institute for Sustainable Resources. Our audience here today includes students and researchers from Tsinghua University, Columbia University, London School of Economics, in the Institute of Science, Yale University, among several other universities. I cannot see right now who else is online. Anyway, I want to welcome you all. To discuss that, we have with us Ilan Superstein from C40, who will show us the role of cities in just transition. Despite the fact that cities are not parties, their leaders can influence the national policies besides designing local strategies. Daniela Matar from Brazilian Ministry of Science and Technology will show us how promotion of science and technology can help national development. Lilia Cotto from UCL has been dedicated to the theme of pathways with several articles published and will tell us about pathways to just transition. Finally, Pedro Moura, Deverrio CEO, will address the issue of carbon markets as a way to make the transition feasible. With that, I would like to turn to Ilan Superstein to give his talk. Ilan, please join us. You have 15 minutes.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Professor Susana, it's great to be here with you and with friends from Brazil, from China, and from elsewhere. I would like to start by thanking for this kind invitation. The China-Brazil Center for Climate Change and Energy Technology Innovation is a very dear institution to me, as I started practically my professional career working for the center, being in Beijing for 3 years and at COPI for another 3 years, launching this important collaboration between the two countries. Currently, I am working at C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group, which is a group of mega cities around the world committed to tackle the climate emergency. And it's interesting to see that out of the 97 cities that we currently work with, we have several cities in China. So we are working with 15, if I'm not mistaken, of the largest Chinese cities on local, municipal, sometimes provincial, depending on the status of each city, policies for climate change. And I work with the team in Latin America, where we currently work with 12 mega cities in the region, spanning Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, Peru, Chile, and of course, the big cities in these countries. And what we see is that, as Professor Susana mentioned, although cities are not signatories to the Paris Agreement, this is exclusively for national governments, we saw back in 2016, immediately after the agreement was signed in 2015, that cities wanted to also do their share of the required actions to comply with actually not even the 2 degrees, which is the goal of the Paris Agreement, but rather 1.5, which is the ambitious goal of the Paris Agreement. But we now know from the IPCC that it's the safe limit. Indeed, that 0.5 degree really makes a huge difference in terms of impact. So in 2016, we launched a program called Deadline 2020, which all of the mayors in Latin America signed, and also quite a few mayors in China with coordination with the national government, the central government, and provincial governments also signed, committing those cities to a zero carbon future by 2050. And in the past 2 years and a half, we have been supporting several cities across the world in developing climate action plans that are compatible with the Paris Agreement. And these climate action plans are local. So we are looking at what each city at the local level can do. And what comes out is very interesting because cities have a huge role to play. We know that 70% of energy-related emissions are now emitted in cities. We know from our research that out of the 97 cities in the region, now 100% of them already report feeling the impacts of climate change, which include mainly either heat waves or heat islands, increase in the frequency and in the intensity of flooding, drought, water security issues, and sea level rise. So out of the 97 largest cities, all of them at this point are already suffering from one of those impacts. So we also took this into consideration by supporting cities to have scenarios, emission scenarios. We usually used three, one baseline for the business as usual, one with the actions already committed, and the third one, which would be the required line of action to really reach zero emission by 2050, and also a climate risk assessment, which of course is very local, but trying to look at those risks that I just mentioned. And in Latin America in particular, we worked with the 12 cities. The 12 out of the 12 cities, 11 cities have already launched their climate action plans, which are now public. And I would like to raise an interesting point, which is the importance of the China-Brazil partnership in reaching those plans. One interesting factor that perhaps is not so widely known around the world is that China, of course, now has 98% of zero-emission buses running in cities. This started with Shenzhen, but it's been followed up by several cities, the latest example being perhaps Nanjing. Latin America comes second in the world for zero-emission bus fleets. And this is because cities like Santiago, which was the first in Chile, and Bogota have taken large steps towards the decarbonization of their bus fleets. It's worth mentioning as well that buses are the most widely used mode of transport in the region. So by tackling emissions from buses and from transport, at least the share of transport emissions in general, has a huge impact in the emissions of these cities. And in Bogota and Santiago, which now add up to almost 3,000 electric buses running, virtually all of the buses are provided by Chinese manufacturers. So that means we have buses from BYD, from Yutong, from Zhongtong, but really all of them are Chinese manufacturers. And this is really the country's industry, the industry of electric buses in China, the one that showed commitment and interest in the Latin American region. Traditional bus providers, mainly European and American, have not looked at Latin America as a potential region for zero emission products in terms of transport, but China has stepped up. So also in Rio de Janeiro, for example, the largest fleet of electric waste collection trucks outside of China is running in Rio. It's still a small fleet, it's 10 buses, but it's the city now alongside Sao Paulo with the largest fleet of electric waste collection trucks. And these numbers, I don't think they're mentioned enough, because this really shows an importance of a South-South cooperation of a country, China, that saw and defined the low and zero carbon industry as a strategic axis of development quite a while ago. This is not something so new. And Latin America, which unfortunately we still don't have the main production happening here, but has been profiting from this availability of new products brought by China. The same with solar energy. Solar energy in Brazil perhaps is one of the good stories, the few good stories that we can bring in terms of national or federal policies regarding climate policies. It has grown over 700% in the last 2 years. And a lot of course, of the providers of the solar panels are Chinese. We can include that yesterday we supported Salvador, one of the 4 C40 cities in Brazil, Salvador, Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, and Curitiba. And they just launched a solar energy program where they create and provide a series of tax incentives for solar energy in the city, including land tax that is discounted if the property has solar energy installed, or even also land use incentives. For instance, if a parking lot of shopping malls is covered with solar panels, they don't have to pay now the land tax corresponding to that parking lot. And we know that a lot of the solar panels that will be installed, that are being installed, are produced in China. So the cooperation between the two countries has a real reflection also on local policies and local solutions. The solutions that are available to cities depend not only on the cities. We know that cities won't do this transition, very ambitious transition, on their own. They also need, of course, policies at the state or regional level, at the national or federal level, but also they need the private sector. And this is where, in this example, we see that China has a huge role in two sectors. One, transport, that I just mentioned, not only for people, but also the waste the waste collection trucks. And finally, also on solar energy, which we know is the easiest decentralized renewable energy to be deployed in urban areas. So these commitments and these decisions by the national governments really have an effect at the local level. And we need more of that. We need Brazil to also have a strong policy for zero emission transport. We also need Brazil to work on topics such as energy storage, so that renewable energy can really take the place of fossil fuels in the country. China is doing what it can in terms of renewable energy. We know that there's a lot of pressure to do more, and the Chinese government is doing that. In fact, I think we have expected news today of the new Chinese NDC to be published just ahead of COP. And I would just like to finish by saying that this transition is crucial for the Paris Agreement. We cannot talk about climate change without talking about cities. And cities have an advantage of working together much more easily sometimes than national governments. So we see cities exchanging information. Just 2 months ago, we had a meeting between the special envoy for climate change of the Chinese government, meeting several mayors of the whole world, in fact. And the mayor of Curitiba, who attended, actually sent a letter to all Chinese cities that attended. There were more than 15, suggesting partnerships in sustainable urban planning and also clean energy, which are areas that are, of course, of interest to Curitiba, and we know that a lot of Chinese cities lead. So now in the run-up to COP, I think it's very important for us to know that the transition that we need needs to happen at the local, at the regional, and at the national level, but cities have really stepped up and led the way, but they need support and coordination with other levels. And this is also where international cooperation, such as the China-Brazil Center, can play a key role. Thank you, Professor Susanna and all. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you, Ilan. It was very nice listening to you. I always enjoy your talk. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to call Daniela from the Ministry of Science and Technology to send her message to us. Please, Daniela, can you join us?
Hi, good day. I share my It's okay?
Sim, sim, Daniela, estamos te ouvindo agora.
Hi. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity of this training and congratulations to everyone on the rich presentations. My name is Daniela Matar. I work at the Ministry of Science and Technology in Brazil with the theme of sustainable cities. And I'm going to talk to you today about the promotion of science and technology at national development, and as a tool for important theme of a just transition. Some of the growing challenges facing cities are social difference, population aging, and the need for digital inclusion, acceleration urbanization, climate change, and more recently, the confrontation with the global pandemic caused by COVID-19, bringing increasing challenges to faced by the cities. In this context, the transition to sustainable development is urgently required with innovation and agile solutions. In search of solutions to sustainable challenges, the MCTI encouraged the promotion of research in technologies that contribute to platforms to data management, the development of new building materials, living labs, and co-creation methodology. The platform for data managing Adapta Brasil programs, for example, offers subsidies to municipal managers to promote measures to adapt to climate change in their territories. Presents information and analysis of the effect of climate change in Brazil. It proposes to provide public and private stakeholders with data that supports decision-making on adaptation through the national territory. The platforms provides benchmarks associated with 3 strategic sectors: water, food, and energy. It also presents projections of impacts for 2030 and 25 climate scenarios, indicating the risks of impact in the region. As a platform, we will also have the Innovation Observatory Sustainable Cities. It's a bank of solutions in the areas of environment, energy, mobility, water, and nature-based solutions. As an example of research for new materials for civil construction, there are biomaterials. Bio-based products are made from renewable materials such as wood, bamboo, straw, and the Professor Toledo is talking about. There are also 2 permeable concrete flooring contain recycling aggregate. This material recycles demolition waste and also allows soil permeability. We encourage the implementation of nature-based solutions and hybrid systems technologies, such as join nanotechnology and photonics, to basic nature solutions too. In some living labs projects, we have partnership with recyclers associations. The project Hematronic aims to transform garbage collectors into urban miners, allowing the collection for the station on noble metal plates such as gold, silver, and copper. When there is a collaborative process of design and execution between agents, there are possible gains for actor publics, like more efficiently public service, state and municipal adherence to Agenda 2030. And for the actors to know knowledge, practical applications of knowledge and the technology transfer. For the actor of civil society, is good for solving real territorial problems. And the positive citizen perception improved quality of life. And for actor business, validation with real user and customers and the innovative solution scalability. The City Nova project allows inclusion and the lifelong education. This is a project for the reforestation of watershed areas with the cultivation of agroforestry, also allowing economic gains from the production of food for rural producers. During the training, the woman who participated in the program suggests lighter machinery, and then the technology was adapted with the objective better ergonomics. The teaching methodology has the challenge in making knowledge immediately applicable. In this sense, there is a challenge constructive ideathlon, what encourages competitors to find solutions based on collective, collaborative, and multidisciplinary construction, with the theme of civil reduction, civil construction, waste reuse management. In this training course for municipal, legislative, and executive, official, and employers of civil society organizations interested in bringing 2030 agenda to their city. The final work is a group purpose for the implementation in the territory. I really hope that this knowledge and technology will make a fair transition possible. And I'm very proud, hopeful that minds as bright as you are dedicated to this topic. My LinkedIn is Daniela Matar, and I'm still available to you. Thank you very much for your attention and the lessons you provide.
Thank you, Daniela, for the words. Now I'm calling the next speaker. It happens to be that the next speaker are together with us in the same room, so this is not going to be virtual; it's presential. And I'm going to call Lilia Caiado from UPL. Please, Lilia.
I'll start sharing my screen. Yeah, I trust you can see it already, right? Okay, so I'll be talking a bit about challenges for measuring green jobs and income, specifically in developing countries, because this is crucial for research around the transition. So this presentation will be based in a few publications. So everything that is in the slides comes directly from these. So these are the sources that I'm citing. So to talk about just transitions, we need to be able to assess the scale of green jobs and the socioeconomic effects of the energy transition. So this is a relevant and timely topic. While clear comparable methodologies are so scarce, so we need to measure how many green jobs are there in the electricity sector, for example, how much income they create, but there isn't still a clear comparable methodology to be used across countries with the data constraints that especially developing countries pose. Yeah, so the extent to which renewable energy creates more positive socioeconomic impacts than fossil fuels is a crucial kind of information to talk about just transitions. The whole debate around just transitions is around how much more jobs and income renewable energy creates as opposed to fossil fuels. But there are major data constraints, especially in developing countries, which are the main focus for just transitions, right? So what in my work, what I've been trying to do is measure how many green jobs are there and how much income they create in developing countries despite the data constraints. So an example of the data challenges is that the IRENA publishes every year this report with a number of jobs in renewable energy in different countries of the world. In Brazil, which is where I come from and the country that I study, they said, for example, that in 2015, there were 918,000 jobs in renewable energy in Brazil. However, if you look at the official data from Brazil, there are only 155,000 people employed in electricity generation, transmission, and distribution. So the entire electricity sector only employs 125,000 according to official data, while the IRENA is saying 918,000 are employed in renewables. So this is clearly inconsistent. So even if IRENA includes indirect and induced effects of job creation and income, the number is over 7 times the official. So there is some kind of imbalance or inconsistency there that we must understand where it comes from. Because when I try to work with the official number, for example, I get out of the 125,000, I need to understand what is the share that is in renewables and what is the share in non-renewables. So how can that be that there are in renewables 7 times the total in the electricity sector? So this is one of the challenges to really do research and to implement this kind of analysis for the transitions, like how the energy transition can create better and more jobs than the more traditional pathways. So one argument that we make in several words is that industrial strategies to develop national suppliers of goods and services to the renewable energy power plant, these kind of strategies are crucial to retain value creation, because otherwise, if all components of those power plants are imported, you wouldn't have as many jobs created. Sorry. Can you all listen to me properly? I've had some feedback that my voice is not getting through well. Any response? That's enough. Okay. So, several authors have argued that developing countries should deploy their own capabilities for green technologies in order to retain those that value creation and conduct a fair transition. So we have analyzed 2 different technologies. Sorry, for some reason the slide is okay. We have analyzed a couple of different technologies. So this example is for concentrated solar power in Brazil. So what we did is map a supply chain to see where in the country, there are industries that could easily adapt to produce those power plant components. So for other examples like wind, we already have the specific industrial plants close to the best site to generate wind power. But in the case of CSP, we don't have any CSP plant in Brazil so far. But we have, for example, a very developed chemical industry which could easily adapt to produce the fluids that are necessary for CSP. And so if they were produced nationally, it would help retain this kind of socioeconomic co-benefit. Some other results that I have found with a colleague through a multi-regional computable general equilibrium analysis for Brazil. In this analysis, we did more of we did macroeconomic modeling, of course, for two different scenarios regarding wind power. So one of the scenarios is the observed scenario from 2010 to 2020, in which the wind electricity installed capacity increased 3 times more than what had been planned by 2010. So we did this macroeconomic modeling analysis to assess what would be the economic impact of what was planned as opposed to the economic impact of what was observed. And what we found was, as you can see in this graph that is not very user-friendly, these are occupations, so different levels of skills, 10 different levels of skills for Northeast Brazil. So it's the least developed region of Brazil, and it concentrates the potential both for solar, different technologies, and wind power generation. So what we have here is we can see that if the planned wind installed capacity by 2010 was observed, many less jobs would have been created. And this is because the actual observed wind power capacity expansion was 3 times greater than planned. So it was 13 gigawatts from 2010 to 2020, as opposed to what had been planned, there was 4 gigawatts. So if the planned 4 gigawatts only were the case, had been observed, then like 0.10% less jobs would have been created in Brazil, but specifically in the Northeast, concentrated in the Northeast, so about 40,000 jobs less would have been created, and those jobs are also more qualified jobs. So this is the kind of analysis that we're doing to try to understand different scenarios with more or less renewable capacity expansion, how those would impact jobs, and more than jobs, different skill levels in different regions. So just to wrap up, we have here at UCL produced this paper with a transdisciplinary research agenda for just transitions specifically in a 1.5 degree scenario. So what we do here is try to understand what are the kinds of risks to justice that trying to accelerate climate action causes. And basically, we propose this transdisciplinary agenda that is integrative of diverse voices. And this is something that I also developed in this policy brief for the Climate Compatible Growth Program by the UK aid. About integrating the voices of developing countries, because we tend to talk quite much about just transitions in the global north, talking about developing countries, but not always including the diverse actors. and also able to, the transdisciplinary research agenda should be able to deal with radical ideas that are urgently needed for the actual implementation of this just transition. Thank you. My email is here, so if you have any doubts or if you would like to chat about anything I said, please send me an email. Thank you.
Thank you, Lilia, for your presentation. I'd like to tell all of you that we are going to open at the end to questions and answers. So please, I saw there is a hand over there, but we will have 2 minutes to discuss. And with that, I would like to turn to Pedro from Desde Rio to talk about climate finance. And just a second, because it appears that Pedro is not online yet, but he's next to me, so I cannot understand what is the difficulty, Pedro.
Okay, actually, but you have presentation.
Just I'll call Pedro to join us in a second.
Hi, everyone, and apologies for the technological challenge here. Tell you what, I mean, that was, it's nice to be the last one because we see what everybody is saying. I mean, Susanna opening with the concept of just economy. Ilan talked about the role that cities can play in all of that. Daniela talked about a series of technologies that will contribute, and Lydia with the energy sector, job creation, and so on. So just essentially concluding, how can carbon finance help with a lot of those transitions and financing a lot of that? Let me see if I can make it a full screen. Hopefully, yes. There we are. There we are. Okay, so just in transition in carbon markets, what can carbon markets contribute to this process? Essentially, at this transition, there is today a tremendous need and enthusiasm for transition to net zero. And this process has to be engaged. It has to engage everyone in society, all different sectors and strata of society. And in general, we need investment. And we need investment in many forms. And carbon markets can help bridge some of this gap, not the whole gap, but parts of that. Can everyone hear me properly? Hello? Yes, yes. Fantastic. So, very rapidly, talking about different sectors. I mean, we talked about energy, we talked about cities, but now I'm talking about, land use and waste and so on. Starting with forest conservation, for instance. I mean, a massive source of emissions, about 10% of global emissions, with indigenous peoples, biodiversity, and so on and so forth. I mean, how do you finance that? Essentially, conservation is a big challenge. It's a difficult one to finance because it doesn't generate an economic activity. Another one is, if you look into agriculture, again, a big source of emissions worldwide. For instance, the rice sector. I mean, 1 billion people live out of rice farming. 1 in 4 farmers in the world is a small rice farmer, predominantly in Asia and West Africa. Rice consumes about 40% of the world's irrigation water, and the production will need to increase in the future. I mean, there's a 20% need of increase in rice to feed all this population worldwide. However, kind of rice, irrigated rice, results in 10% of global emissions, which is a significant amount of greenhouse gases worldwide. There are somewhat cheap ways of reducing that. Something called alternate wetting and drying, for instance, can greatly reduce methane emissions and increase productivity and increase the cost of the livelihoods of so many people, predominantly in Asia and Southeast Asia. Grains. Take for instance soy in Brazil, one of the biggest drivers of deforestation there. There is a tremendous demand for increasing soy cultivation. This is leading to a lot of deforestation. But again, Brazil has 4 times more land which is already open that could be used for expansion of grains, as opposed to deforesting kind of existing vegetation. So essentially, you need financial incentives for that, and carbon finance can come and help with that. Circular economy. There's something like 11 million, well, more like 20 million today, kind of informal waste pickers around the world, collecting a significant amount of plastic waste around the world. 1 ton of plastic recycled is anything between 2 and 5 tons of CO2 emissions avoided. So again, super important challenge. I often joke that plastic is the new carbon somehow, because it's a tremendous global challenge. And guess what? Apart from specific finance for circular economy, carbon finance can help to make that happen. Cattle ranch. I mean, this photograph of a cow in half of Damien Hirst. I joke that this reflects kind of cattle ranching in Brazil and Latin America, where the average stocking per hectare is half a cow per hectare. So if you then intensify cattle ranching, you sequester a lot of carbon in native vegetation, you avoid emissions, and again, tremendous opportunity for carbon finance to make that a better, more viable business. So the good news is that carbon markets are back. I mean, if you had asked me that 3 years ago, I would say, well, there's zero value on that. But in the recent years, 2 or 3 years, the voluntary carbon markets in particular have grown from very, very small to billions and billions of dollars of demand a year. And now it's populated by very large players, large enough that it can enable you to have bankable offtake agreements and to justify investment in all these activities that I mentioned, but also the other ones that our colleagues mentioned before. And with that, with this whole new infrastructure of the Task Force for Scaling Voluntary Carbon Markets, the Voluntary Carbon Markets Integrity Initiative, of which I am in the steering committee, the science-based targets and so on, you can kind of start to mobilize finance at scale, at the billion-dollar level, to all these activities that are necessary for a just transition. Finally, just a few words about my organization, DV which was actually kind of created in partnership with Professor Susanna a few years ago. It's actually 10 years ago. It's our anniversary now, and it's an organization that has a mission to design and promote these innovative market-based solutions for the environment, for people, and for the economy, and in the process contribute to a just transition. We work with a bunch of things from sustainable land use to circular economy. A series of initiatives. I'm not going to go through that now. And we started in Rio. The DV Rio stands for Environmental Exchange of Rio, but now we have an impact which is global and presence in many countries. Now, just to finalize, in this whole discussion about GALC and the network of universities and initiatives around the world, we've been discussing the possibility of testing climate finance to start with engaging universities in themselves kind of progressing towards a net zero pathway. And there is a possibility of engaging all this intellectual capacity, the networks of students and researchers to really develop something like a cap and trade system, starting with this network of universities, but that serves as a laboratory for all this new generation, the future generation of climate finance leaders, really to learn on a hands-on process. And that is something that we're really excited about, and I hope that under the leadership of Susanna and her colleagues, we can make it happen sometime soon. So with this, I think I'm going to stop here, and I think that it's about time that we have a discussion with all of you. Thank you very much. Back to Susanna.
Well, thank you, Pedro. Well, we haven't changed the name, but now it's me again. I'm back. Well, thank you all for the presentations. We are going to open to questions, but before opening to the questions, I'd like to highlight what GALC, our global network, represents. Pedro mentioned the potential that we have together, and if we consider our community among the students, researchers, professors, we are almost 500,000 people. So we are a large community, and if we are together, we can make a difference in pushing the climate agenda. So there are some people here to just want to pose a question. What I have to do? I can open the mic. So Climate Summit, can you please make your question? Well, sorry for the confusion here. This is extremely new for me, this kind of hybrid conference. Well, there is a question here, I guess it's to Ilan, that is, as we mentioned, I'd like to ask, how will youth play an impact in shaping decisions on a city level? So I'd like to call Ilan to explain his views on the youth.
So, sorry, Susanna, how youth will impact? Is that correct? Is that the question?
Sorry, Ilan, you are on mute for me. So.
No, just, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Just to clarify, how the youth can participate, is that the question?
Yes, exactly. That's the question.
Great, thank you. Well, this is a great question, and there is an issue of intergenerational justice, which means that the youth must have a voice, not only because they are part of society and every group in society needs to take part, but also because they will be the most impacted by actions that they didn't take. In C40, we developed specific youth-led work. So currently we have a Youth and Mayors Global Forum, which is composed of mayors and youth members that were selected through an open process. So youth could apply from throughout the world, showing their action in climate change, to discuss how to bring the youth voice to climate action. And I'm happy to say that in about a week during COP, we will launch a study that compiles good practice from throughout the world of engagement of youth in urban climate action. And we can give quick examples. Lima in Peru has created a children's city council, where also children that are selected through an open process in the city, they are part of a, and it's quite cute because these are small kids. We're talking about 8, 9, 10-year-olds that actually have inputs and can provide feedback on urban and municipal policies. But aside from that, Bogota now in Colombia has established, I think it's the first in the region, that it's a formal process for youth councillors election. So there will be a formal council of youth that will participate formally. This is not just an experiment. They will participate formally in the planning and implementation of certain policies, mainly regarding youth, and that includes, of course, climate. And we have other examples throughout the world, but this must increase. And we started this process back in 2019 at our most important event, which is called the C40 Global Mayor Summit, where we bring all of the mayors to the same place to discuss climate action and what C40 should do. For the first time, we invited young climate leaders from throughout the world, and in every panel, and there were over 50, talking about food, transportation, finance, waste, adaptation, water, green infrastructure, and others. Every panel had to have a youth member alongside other leaders from the private sector, from the public sector. So these are some of the actions that we're taking, and it definitely needs to increase. So we need to have more channels through which the youth and young climate leaders can convey their opinions and can participate, not just speak, but also participate in the discussions and in the implementation of the required climate actions for the fulfillment of, hopefully, and it's increasingly hard, the 1.5 degree route.
Thank you, Ilan, for the clarification about the youth role in the cities. Well, I'd like to know if we can open the mic. So if someone wants to comment something or make a question, please don't be shy. We are going to have this presentation and the whole event on the YouTube in the next days. It will be on our website of the Brazil-China Center. But this is going to be, I guess, in next week. But I'd like to know what some of your reaction about what has been discussed. So, if someone is willing to participate, I'll be glad to listen to you. Okay, Daniela, you can please. They don't see the chat. You can mention your view here. Please, Daniela, join us.
Hi. In my perception, young people vote by have influence in their environment, are digitally included. They can mobilize the society companies and they putting pressure on governance. I think the young people have a lot of power because they are included digital. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. Someone else? So, if you don't have any other questions, we can close. I'm not sure which one. Well, Pedro wants to make a comment. Please, Pedro.
No, it's not a question, Susanna, but more it's a comment. You know, after all, we are in a youth summit, and what we are excited about is what is the youth, the new generation, should be able to contribute to this transition. In the end of the day, once the transition, the youth will be a bit older, actually. So it's really important that they take a leadership role. So the GALC, you know, kind of emission trading scheme, climate laboratory, and so on, is an idea that we really like to promote among this group. And given that we all here, you know, around this call, I'll be very interested in comments from people in other parts of the world, in China, in the US, wherever you may be, in India. What do you think about us joining forces and creating some sort of exercise like that, a lab for emission trading, kind of exercises in a process to try to reduce emissions within the universities themselves? So this is a question to all of you, and I wonder if you guys could actually, you know, come up with your comments from wherever you are in the world.
Thank you, Pedro. I think that it's a good point because we are here to in the youth summit, and it's very important for us to know about the reactions from the youth and what do you expect from us? What we can, how can we help this transition together with you, and how can we help you to promote different pathways for the different countries, different regions. So I'd like to know if someone wants to react, to say say something, again, the mic is open, or if you prefer, you can just type on the chat if you don't want to speak out. So I'll take some minutes before closing to just to see if there is any comments from you. Well, since you're not making any question or comment, I will close this event, and I'll thank again to our participants, to the audience that follow our discussion, our debate here. But anyway, if you still want to make any comments or pose some questions, you can send us an email. We'll be happy to respond you back. Thank you. Let's move for the next section, or if this is the end. This is the end. Okay, so thank you very much. Keep safe. Bye-bye.